Stop negotiating your worth with people who can't see it. This simple truth is one of the hardest lessons we can learn in life. Too often, we become trapped in a cycle of proving ourselves to people who have already decided not to see our value. Whether it's friends, family members, coworkers, or partners, we bend ourselves in unnatural ways, hoping that if we try hard enough, change enough, please enough, we'll finally earn the respect or recognition we crave. But here's the brutal truth, people who are committed to misunderstanding you will never appreciate you. And the more energy you pour into convincing them, the further you drift from your own identity. Many of us have been conditioned to believe that if we're not accepted by certain people, it means something is wrong with us. That's a lie. That's emotional slavery disguised as loyalty or humility. The reality is that your worth isn't up for negotiation. It's not a contract you bargain with. It's something inherent. When people fail to recognize it, it doesn't mean you have less of it. It just means they're incapable of seeing you clearly, and it's not your job to fix their vision. We must understand that there is a difference between humility and self-erasure. Trying to win someone's approval by shrinking yourself, by explaining every action, by tolerating disrespect, that isn't noble. That's self-betrayal. In trying to make ourselves small enough to fit into someone else's narrow expectations, we end up losing the essence of who we are. That's the real tragedy. We give away pieces of ourselves to people who were never interested in seeing the whole picture in the first place. It often starts with small compromises. We ignore comments that feel like subtle insults. We tolerate patterns of being overlooked, forgotten, or taken for granted. We rationalize saying, maybe they're just busy, or maybe I'm expecting too much. But deep down, you feel the sting of being invisible in a place where you should feel seen. And each time you ignore that voice inside, you push down the true thing they don't value. And worse, you've started accepting it. It is not cruelty to walk away from people who diminish your spirit. In fact, it is an act of clarity and courage. You have to learn to protect your self-worth like it's sacred, because it is. You don't keep showing up for people who never save you a seat. You don't keep knocking on closed doors. You don't keep watering dead plants. You recognize the pattern, you name it, and you break it. You stop proving and start preserving. If someone can't see your value, they're not your people. That doesn't make them evil. It just makes them unfit to carry a role in your journey. And trying to make it otherwise is like dragging an anchor and calling it loyalty. It will slow you down. It will weigh on your peace. It will kill your momentum. You must become comfortable with the idea that not everyone will like you, understand you, or support you. And that's okay. What matters is that you don't lose yourself trying to win them. Your purpose is far too important to be delayed by people who never saw your light to begin with. Walk away when you must, and when you do, don't look back, because the ones who matter will never require you to beg for your worth. Your environment is a mirror. Surround yourself with those who reflect respect. We often underestimate just how deeply the people around us shape our sense of self. You can be strong, intelligent, driven, but if you're surrounded by voices that constantly dismiss you, doubt you, or downplay your potential, eventually that noise seeps into your own thoughts. It becomes internalized. What you once knew about yourself, your confidence, your vision, your worth, starts to feel shaky, not because you've changed, but because the reflection you've been given over and over is distorted. Imagine trying to see your true self in a broken mirror. That's what it's like to seek validation in places where you're not respected. You can stand tall, speak truthfully, and act with integrity. But if the people around you are committed to misunderstanding or diminishing you, that reflection will always feel warped. And if you stare into it too long, you'll start to believe the lie. This is why choosing your environment is not just about comfort, it's about survival. You can't grow in soil that poisons your roots. No matter how much light you carry inside you, if you plant yourself in places where you're not watered with love, trust, and respect, you'll slowly wither. It's not weakness to admit this. It's with clarity. The belief that you can endure toxicity long enough to change it is dangerous. Because often in that process, it's you who changes. For the worse, people often say, you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. But it goes deeper than that. You begin to adopt their language, mimic their energy, absorb their standards. If those standards are low, if they normalize disrespect, excuses, or manipulation, you'll begin to see those things as inevitable. And slowly, the bar for how you allow yourself to be treated begins to drop. Respect is not a luxury. It's a baseline, and you deserve to be in spaces where your presence isn't merely tolerated but treasured. Where people don't just hear your words, they listen. Where you're not edited down to what makes others comfortable, but allowed to be fully, unapologetically yourself. That's not entitlement. That's emotional hygiene. And just like you wouldn't keep breathing toxic air, you shouldn't keep breathing in toxic relationships. Now, this doesn't mean you surround yourself only with people who praise you or agree with you. True respect includes honesty, challenge, and even constructive discomfort. But the difference is, it comes from a place of care, not control. It seeks to build you, not break you. You'll know the difference when you feel it. One makes you stronger, the other makes you shrink. Look closely at the people in your life. Do they make space for your voice? Or silence it? Do they push you toward your purpose? Or distract you from it? Do they celebrate your growth or resonate? These are not small questions. These are defining ones, because your future, your peace, your power will be shaped by the reflections you surround yourself with. And if you find that your current circle doesn't reflect who you truly are or who you're trying to become, don't be afraid to walk away. Loneliness is painful, but being devalued is soul-crushing. Choose the quiet of solitude over the noise of disrespect. In that space, you'll begin to hear your own voice again. And when you do, protect it, because you were never meant to be. Invisible emotional slavery is a choice. You're not bound to stay where you're ignored. That may sound harsh, even offensive to some, because the idea of choice, when we're suffering, can feel like an accusation, but it's not meant to shame, it's meant to liberate. Too often, we stay in environments and relationships and routines that drain our emotional energy. Not because we're forced to, but because we've convinced ourselves that leaving would make us the bad person. So we stay, we justify, we endure, and in the process, we slowly abandon our own soul. There comes a point when you have to ask, what am I really afraid of? Rejection, loneliness, guilt? Many people choose to remain unseen and unappreciated because it feels safer than stepping into the unknown. They trade peace for proximity. They choose the familiar pain of being overlooked over the uncertain freedom of walking away. That is emotional slavery. It's a condition where your identity, your worth, your very peace is tied to someone else's validation or lack of it. But the truth is, freedom doesn't begin when your circumstances change. It begins when your mindset does. The moment you realize that you do not need to earn your place in anyone's life, that is when everything shifts. You begin to see that staying in a situation where you are persistently ignored or disrespected is not loyalty. It's fear dressed up in a noble disguise. And no matter how much you give, serve, sacrifice, or bend, it will never be enough for someone who has already decided that you're not worth truly seeing. When someone constantly ignores your needs, your voice, your presence, you are being told, without words, that your value in that space is conditional. And if you accept that treatment, you begin to reinforce a pattern, not just for them, but for yourself. You begin to believe that maybe you are too much. Maybe you are too emotional, too intense, too needy. But none of that is true. You're not too much. You're just in the wrong room. And don't misunderstand. Leaving isn't always about cutting people off. Sometimes it's just about changing the terms. It's about creating boundaries that protect your well-being It's about choosing to stop overextending yourself for people who never even meet you halfway. It's true. It's about letting go of the version of you that thought love had to be earned through self-abandonment. We've been taught that staying quiet, keeping the peace, and pleasing others is the path to love and acceptance. But love that demands silence is not love, it's control. Peace that requires your disappearance is not peace, it's suppression. And relationships that only function when you're pretending to be okay are not real. They're performance. You have a right to outgrow people who won't grow with you. You have a right to seek connection that is mutual, not manipulative. You have a right to walk away from places that demand your silence as the price for staying. That is not betrayal, that is self-preservation. So stop waiting for someone else to give you permission to leave. Stop believing that you owe your life to people who only see you when they need something. You are not bound to that space. You are not obligated to carry the weight of being overlooked. You put down, you can walk away. You can choose freedom over familiarity. Because at the end of the day, staying where you're not seen is far lonelier than walking alone. You can't fix broken people by breaking yourself. That's a hard truth for those with kind hearts and deep loyalty. When you care deeply, when you see someone hurting or stuck in toxic cycles, the instinct is to help, often at your own expense. You want to be the one who lifts them, who stays when everyone else walks away, who loves them into healing. But what happens far too often is that in trying to fix them, you slowly start to lose yourself. There's a dangerous illusion in thinking your love or loyalty is enough to change someone who's not ready to change. You start off with hope. Maybe if I just show more patience. If I give them more chances, if I explain it one more time, maybe then they'll finally see my worth. Maybe then they'll stop hurting me. But you're not loving them anymore. You're rescuing them. And in that rescue mission, you begin to ignore all the signs of your own damage. It's easy to blur the line between compassion and self-neglect. But when your care for someone leads to your own emotional depletion, it's no longer healthy. It's self-sacrifice disguised as virtue. And make no mistake, consistently sacrificing yourself to keep someone else afloat is not love. It's survival. And eventually it turns into resentment. You give and they take, and still nothing changes except you. You become smaller, quieter, more anxious, more exhausted. And what's worse, you start to believe that maybe the problem is you. But it's not. Their healing is not your responsibility. Their growth is not your burden to carry. Their inability to love, respect, or appreciate you doesn't mean you should try harder. It means you need to step back. It means you need to stop bleeding emotionally in hopes they'll notice the pain. Because the truth is, some people won't change. Not because they can't, but because they don't want to. And your suffering won't be the thing that inspires them. Sometimes they'll even use your compassion against you. They'll manipulate your empathy, guilt you into staying, paint themselves as the victim while you break apart silently behind closed doors. This cycle continues until you decide it has to end, until you choose to protect your spirit more than you protect their comfort. And choosing yourself doesn't make you cruel. It makes you wise. It means you finally understand that your worth is not proven by how much you can endure. It's not shown in how long you can stay in a place that's breaking you. Real strength is walking away from what wounds you, even when your heart still cares. Some people will only learn from distance. Some will never learn at all. That's not your fault. That's not your responsibility. Your job is not to be someone's emotional crutch while they refuse to walk. Your job is not to stay in spaces that treat your kindness like weakness. Your job is to become everything you were meant to be, and you can't do that while constantly putting yourself last. So stop trying to fix those who are comfortable being broken. You deserve relationships that don't require your suffering to function. You deserve peace that doesn't come with conditions. You deserve love that doesn't make you question your own sanity. You are not the cure for someone else's chaos. Silence is the lewdest form of self-respect. That might sound counterintuitive in a world that constantly tells you to explain, defend, and justify yourself. But sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is say nothing, not out of weakness, but out of clarity. When you've repeated yourself enough, cried enough, apologized for things you didn't do, explained your pain to someone who never truly listened, you start to realize that silence isn't giving up, it's rising above. There's a moment in life when you understand that words won't change someone who doesn't want to understand. It doesn't matter how sincere you are, how well you explain your feelings, or how long you argue your side. If they're not interested in seeing you clearly, no amount of speaking will make them hear you. And that's when silence becomes your strength. Not a bitter silence, not passive aggression, but a calm withdrawal. A quiet step back that says, I value myself too much to keep wasting my voice where it's not valued. The people who truly respect you won't need 1,000 explanations. They'll listen the first time. They won't make you perform pain just to be taken seriously. But those who don't value you, those who benefit from your silence while they speak over you, will try to pull you into endless conversations that go nowhere. And when you stop responding, they may call you cold, distant, selfish. But what they're really saying is, I miss the version of you who tolerated my disregard. A walking away silently from disrespect is an act of discipline. It's not always dramatic. There's no announcement, no final speech. It's a decision you make quietly, internally, when you realize that engaging further is only hurting you. That staying in a conversation, a relationship, a dynamic where you're not heard isn't strength, it's self-abandonment. You start to learn that you don't need to keep proving your point. Some people will never give you the closure or understanding you deserve, not because you didn't explain yourself well enough, but because their ego won't let them. Silence doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care more about your peace than about being right. It means you've accepted that not every battle deserves your energy, not every insult deserves a response, and not every relationship is worth saving. Sometimes silence is the only way to stop pouring into a cup that was never meant to hold your heart. In that silence, you find space to hear yourself again. You begin to reconnect with the parts of you that were always trying to scream over the noise of someone else's chaos. You realize that your voice matters, but it doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. It just needs to be heard by the right people, or held in for the right reasons. You realize that walking away without drama isn't weakness, it's wisdom, it's emotional maturity. It's you choosing yourself over cycles that never end. Letting go silently is often harder than staying loud, but it's cleaner, more final, more honest. You don't owe anyone a speech when you decide to stop tolerating what never served you. Your peace doesn't need a permission slip. And your silence, when rooted in self-worth, says more than any words ever could. Sometimes the quietest exit is the most powerful statement. Choose legacy over acceptance. Build, don't beg. At some point in your journey, you have to make a decision. Do you want to be accepted by people who don't truly value you? Or do you want to build a life that reflects your purpose, your principles, and your power? Because the two rarely go together. The more you step into your calling, the more you'll threaten the comfort zones of others. The more authentic you become, the more uncomfortable it will make people who rely on your silence or your compromise. And if your goal is to please everyone, you'll end up pleasing no one and losing yourself in the process. Acceptance, when it requires you to shrink, is not a gift. It's a trap. It's a slow erosion of who you are. You start trimming parts of your personality, adjusting your beliefs, downplaying your ambition, all to avoid rejection from people who never truly saw you anyway. It becomes a performance, a quiet begging. Please let me belong. But you weren't born to fit in. You were born to build something lasting, something meaningful, something real. Legacy isn't built through popularity, it's built through perseverance. It's built by staying true to who you are even when it's unpopular. even when it costs you connections, approval, and applause. Choosing legacy means putting your energy into the future, not into people who can't see past their own limitations. It means asking, what will my life stand for? Instead of, who still likes me today? And once you start thinking that way, the approval of those who misunderstand or underestimate you becomes irrelevant. That doesn't mean you isolate yourself or stop caring about people. It means you stop letting their inability to accept you dictate how far you go. Because the truth is, the people who truly value you will never ask you to become less. They'll never guilt you for growing. They won't disappear the moment you set a boundary or chase a dream. But the ones who only liked you when you stayed small, let them go. Their acceptance is too expensive. It costs your freedom. It costs your vision. It costs your voice. And here's something to remember. The people who changed the world, those who left something behind, were rarely accepted in the beginning. They were doubted, criticized, mocked, sometimes even hated. But they built anyway. They kept creating, speaking, leading, showing up, because they knew they were building something bigger than a moment of approval. They were chasing legacy, not applause. So what are you building? A version of yourself that pleases others, or a foundation that your future can stand on. Every time you silence your convictions just to keep peace, you're trading bricks of legacy for crumbs of acceptance. Every time you lower your standards to fit into someone else's comfort zone, you're handing over pieces of your potential. You don't have to be accepted by the crowd to be effective. You don't need permission to shine. Build quietly if you must. Build in private if you're being overlooked. But don't stop. Keep building the life, the character, the message that reflects who you truly are. And when the time comes, your legacy will speak for itself. Louder than applause, deeper than acceptance. Because in the end, it's not about who clapped, it's about what you created.